Hello and welcome into a Players Championship edition of Going for the Green. It is our first Going for the Green show of 2022, streaming on NBC Sports EDGE's YouTube page. Perhaps you're watching on demand on Peacock, but I am Will Gray, pleased to be joined, as always, by the whale capper himself, Drew Dinsick. Drew, we've got a lot to discuss. We're going to go an hour long. We're talking best bets, props, DFS. We're going to get a peek behind the curtain with our friends at PointsBet, but there is a lot to discuss this week. The best on the PGA Tour have gathered. It's the Stadium Course at TPC Sawgrass. It's a venue that, if you're a golf fan, you know it very well. The Island Green on 17. There's going to be drama, and this week there's going to be some weather. So give me some initial thoughts. What are you most looking forward to this week down in Ponte Vedra Beach?
Yeah, so a tournament like this, in my opinion, opens up a lot of opportunity for the bettors. There's going to be chaos. There's going to be, in a good year, weather-wise, there's uncertainty here that tends to drive a lot of the, a lot of the markets. And with the potential weather forecast adding even more uncertainty to the mix here, that should create some opportunity for us. And now, whether that's specifically targeting the right players in the outright markets or just finding advantages in the way that some of the kind of exotics are priced, we'll break all that down today. But I thought I was going to come into this and be like, well, everything looks pretty fair, but I was surprised at some of the prices, some of the market moves already. This is going to be a pretty decent handle, pretty good attention, and so far I'm excited to get involved with this from a betting standpoint.
Yeah, it's an interesting board when you look at it. There's not a player that stands out above the rest. We've got the three top favorites. When you look at the top board of who is expected to be at the top, that you would think the top two players in the world, you've got Jon Rahm and Collin Morikawa, and then of course you have the defending champion, Justin Thomas. So Rahm is there at 12-1, JT and Morikawa at 14-1. Then there's a little bit of a drop, but this is going to be, a week of parity. I think that you can go 10, 20 deep and make an argument for a lot of these players, given how unpredictable this golf course is on a yearly basis. I mean, this is a course where you can make double bogey on any hole. There's not a big balance or a lean one way or the other between guys that hit it long, guys that hit short. Do you hit it right to left to right? It's a peak die track for better or worse, and it's one that challenges all facets of your game. So I do expect, when we talk to Jay Croucher, head trader at PointsBet, that we're going to hear that they've got some balanced action as you see some really big names all the way down into that 40 and 50-1 range. I'm still shaking my head at Dustin Johnson. He was at 40-1 earlier this week. He's now still at 35-1, but I'm used to talking about DJ is one of the top 2 or 3 favorites, and here we are. He's on page 2 of our leaderboard when you look at the odds.
Yeah, it's true. And there are a couple of players like DJ, like Brooks, and actually even the guy at the top, Jon Rahm, that I am curious to get Jay's take on here in terms of how they came up with these prices. Because as you see, Jon Rahm at 12-1, if you've been paying attention to golf over the last year, he is clearly the best player in the world. I don't think really there's any kind of argument about that. And he has been playing well. Like, whether you are someone who aggressively downweights past performance or someone who takes a look at a much broader sample, you are still coming to the conclusion that he is the best player on tour. And if you look at some of his recent results, I would say that you can kind of explain a lot of that away with just sort of poor luck from a putting standpoint. And if Jon Rahm's putter gets hot, all of a sudden 12-1 is going to feel like a steal. The interesting part that I'm curious about breaking down with Jay, PointsBet taking they're asking for Jon Rahm money right now. A lot of other folks out there across the marketplace have dropped him into the 8-1, 10-1 range. Best price available on Rahm, still at PointsBet. So fascinated to hear a little bit more insight in terms of what has them somewhat bearish on the Spaniard.
There's a significant dichotomy right now with Jon Rahm. You mentioned it. When you look at his ball striking stats for the season, when you look at his ball striking stats just at Sawgrass, he's the best in the field by a mile. The issue is on the greens. We saw last week at Bay Hill, the moment that went viral, he missed a 10-inch putt, but it's more than that. He's 135th this season in strokes gained putting. The putter has been a big issue for Jon Rahm, so I will be interested to see how he plays. As you said, if he has a decent week on the greens, we're talking about Jon Rahm winning this tournament on Sunday, but it's going to be a matter of if he's able to get it done. But I want to pivot now, and we mentioned the weather, Drew. It's going to be a big factor. If you look at that forecast, you're seeing some icons that you're not used to seeing when you're talking about Northeast Florida in March. There's wind advisories. There's going to be rain. We're talking Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's going to be very inclement. I mean, they're looking at about 3 inches of rain spread across those couple days. The players are going to go out tomorrow and play a practice round where it's 85, and on Sunday the high is 54 and blowing. So this is going to add a huge element to the handicap because the wind is going to shift. They're going to have 4 different directions. We just heard a little bit ago on Golf Channel's live from coverage. They're talking to these players as they come to 17, and they're saying, I'm about to hit a shot into this green that I'm not going to hit those next 4 days. This is basically useless outside of just getting through the repetition and understanding the course a little bit. But such a wild forecast. And I do think, personally, I think it's going to play a big role in how this tournament plays out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Kind of keeping track of wave bias, keeping track of what's going on with how soft the course is, particularly on the first 2 days, and how that plays into players who could potentially make or miss the cut is going to be massive if you're handicapping matchups. And then similarly, I mean, cold, wind, rain. This is like the open conditions, not Florida weather. So it's going to be an unusual situation for these players. Certainly, out of one, as you mentioned, a very challenging course. Speaking of challenging courses, we saw, as we are in Florida, there is a lot of water hazard, of course, and we saw water play a very meaningful role in taking out some pretty big names last week at the Arnie Palmer. What is your general feel about how some of these guys who are clearly the best golfers in the world, after getting kind of, roughed up a little bit, over the weekend at the Arnie Palmer, are they going to be able to bounce back no problem? Or are we expecting guys like Hovland, McIlroy, and, some of the other kind of big names to show a little bit of wear and tear from that performance?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I mean, we saw last year Lee Westwood and Bryson DeChambeau went toe-to-toe at Bay Hill on a difficult course as well, difficult setup. And the very next week, they were right there at the Players' Championship. So both of them were able to keep it going. We've seen historically the winner at the Players' Championship since 2011 in his previous start has finished T22 or better. So for the most part, if you're looking at guys to back, look at their most recent start. They probably need to have played well if they're going to play well this week. But I do think that there is a little bit of a toll in listening to some of the guys. I was out there last week for a couple of days at Bay Hill, and you could tell it was wearing on them. Rory specifically came out on Saturday and Sunday and had a lot to say about the course and that it was probably too difficult. He was asked this morning on Tuesday about, were your comments misconstrued? Were you complaining as complaining? He's like, no, I was complaining. Don't get me wrong. I was complaining about the setup. I had a problem with it. So Chris Kirk had a surprise top 10 finish at Bay Hill. You thought, hey, are you going to make the drive 2.5 hours to Ponte Vedra? He's like, no, I'm getting in the plane. I'm flying home to Georgia. I need 2 days to unplug, and then I'm going to come back in and reassess and get back to TPC Sawgrass. So I do think, especially with Rory, I'm a little bearish on Rory this week because of what's going on in between the ears, and Hovland doesn't have the course history that you might expect for this week. So I do think that this is one where I'm going to take it into account. And as you look at who's going to be still standing on Saturday and Sunday, knowing the mental gauntlet that awaits over these next few days, I think it's a factor for sure.
Yeah, I think it's easy. It's those two players in particular. Not going to include those on make the cut parlays. The very realistic chance that these guys eject just because of how potentially gnarly this could go. And fascinating insight. Just I love hearing that from you who are plugged into exactly what these players are thinking and doing, because it's a mental game ultimately. Yep.
Well, we've got some hot hands to discuss, including last week's winner. We saw Scotty Scheffler slip into the red sweater at Arnie's place. And he is one of 2 players who have won twice this season on the PGA Tour. Scheffler won in Phoenix. He also won at Bay Hill. We also have Hideki Matsuyama, who won the Zozo in the fall. He won the Sony Open in January. When you look at the field in terms of guys that have won events already this year, we saw Joaquin Niemann have a really dominant performance a couple weeks ago at Riviera. Does anyone stand out as someone, we're used to seeing? Usually the Players' Champion has won recently, if not earlier this year. Does someone stick out in that vein?
So for sure, Neiman is a guy that I have a little bit on fade alert. I was obviously wildly impressed with how well he played at Riviera. But I think to a degree, he's going to, we'll see a little bit of a pullback in terms of his competitiveness over the next couple of weeks as he kind of, basks in the glow of that recent championships. Scheffler is a much tougher handicap for me. I feel like both last week and at the Waste Management, it was a little bit like the title just kind of landed in his lap, like more so than like he was the best player clearly and really like seized those titles. Like he just kind of, they kind of, he did not make the mistake, and lo and behold, here he is, one of only a few players that has multiple pelts so far this year, which is crazy. And he's a great golfer. Don't get me wrong, but surely if you look across the market right now, it is pretty clear that there is a slight, plus EV, but just flat across the numbers for Scheffler. Like, people are like, he's going to let up a little bit. There's not going to be quite as much there this week, or he could take his foot off the gas a little bit, because if you are like average weighting, his last handful of rounds, he should absolutely be priced up there with the top guys in this field, not kind of in that second tier. So interesting that, the market wide reflects a little bit of an expectation that Scheffler is going to come back to the pack a bit. And I guess, again, kind of considering the fact that, like, he wasn't really, in my mind at least, the best golfer in the 2 titles that he won this year, that may be playing into that a bit.
Yeah, we're looking now at a graphic here from our Edge Driver tool at NBC Sports Edge, and you can see that Scottie Scheffler has really put it together. We expected a lot out of him this season, coming off that he made the Ryder Cup team last season, even though he had not yet won on the PGA Tour. He got that watershed victory in Phoenix, has very quickly validated it. So you do think that there's a lot in the future for him, maybe not so much this week coming off of that win. But I want to bring in Patrick McDonald. He's one of our writers in the golf space for NBC Sports Edge. Hello, Pat. And we were just talking about Joaquin Niemann. I believe a little birdie told me that you had a 70-1 ticket on Joaquin Niemann when he did go on to win that Genesis Invitational in wire-to-wire fashion. So kudos to that. Hope you haven't spent it all yet or reinvested it, but interested to get your take on what we're looking at this week at TPC Sawgrass.
Yeah, I mean, like you guys mentioned at the top, Drew, I'm kind of in agreement with you. Scottie Scheffler kind of backed into his victories so far this year. He's a great talent, obviously, but we haven't seen those premier players win yet this season. No Jon Rahm, no Morikawa, no JT, and I think that comes to an end finally this week. You see Rahm at the top. It's his best number in quite a while. I can't really fault you if you want to look in that direction, but a player I think who is slightly underpriced is Patrick Cantlay, 20-1. I got involved at 27 earlier in the week, so there's some money coming in on him. But let us not forget, past 8 months, this guy is arguably top 2 or 3 player in the world number 4 now, and we're getting a discount just because he hasn't figured out TPC Sawgrass yet. But to that, I say this version of Patrick Cantlay has never played this version of TPC Sawgrass. He has been great on peak dye designs throughout his career. You look at TPC River Highlands, you look at Harbor Town, you look to this past spring when he arrived to the Ocean Course off 4 missed cuts in a row. He was there on Sunday and almost posted a number for Phil and Brooks to chase. And he's a strategic, he's a thinker. He likes to play point A to point B golf, and Sawgrass is right up his alley. He's an elite all-around talent, and most importantly, he's an elite par 5 scorer. You look at Justin Thomas last year, 14 under on the par 5s, finished the week 14 under total. Patrick Cantlay, top 5 in par 5 scoring. I'm comfortable with him on the back 9 on Sunday, and I think he is your player's champion by Sunday evening.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. See, in the era of the PIP and all the social media buzz, Patrick Cantlay's off Twitter. Maybe doesn't get enough discussion, but it's interesting you mentioned this version of Sawgrass. We need to bring this up. This tournament's in March. This is the 4th year they've had it in March. When you're looking back at some of these historical numbers from 2007 to 2018, it was in May. That was a very different course, different weather. So this is absolutely a factor when you're looking at some of those recent numbers. But Drew, is there another outright that's sticking out to you, or are you on Team Rahm?
Well, I'm on Team Rahm, and it's mostly the same reasons that Patrick laid out. Might not see 12-1 again this year, so going to go ahead and grab some of that now. But your points about Cantlay, I think, are really prescient, because this is going to be wet, round 1, round 2, and he's a guy that can go long. And I think realistically, if he can take advantage of the conditions in the early going here and really kind of hang a really impressive number, this could be sort of. Unless, there could be drama on the weekend, but this also could be, Cantlay runs away and hides. So it's definitely worth considering. And in that vein, is there any way to take advantage of what we know about the weather and the conditions to try to track down, say, a first-round leader bet on Thursday?
Yeah, I feel like we should have like Al Roker on the show or something to kind of decipher the forecast. But in Florida, you always got to look at the wind. And like you guys mentioned, the rain's coming in heavy. And I'm going to look at Thursday morning tee times and PointsBet. I'd love to hear Jay's take on it, because they've hung 150-1 on Jonathan Vegas. Most of the market's around 100, so I'll happily buy in at that. And you look at the March performances he's been able to put together. 6 out of 8 rounds at Sawgrass. He's gained strokes putting, 3 of those have gone for north of a stroke and a half putting. So he's a great tee to green player, great driver, a nice blend of distance and accuracy. The irons have been hot to start 2022. You look back to 2019, that weekend when Rory won, cold, windy. Johnny Vegas shot 11 under the final 36 holes. So I like him something around 65. He'll need to skirt past those par threes, play him an even par. Maybe if I'm greedy, throw a birdie in there if we're lucky. 150 to 1, you could do a lot worse for a Thursday first round leader.
So, Drew, I know that I spent some time talking about how I'm fading the guys that were on the mix in Bay Hill. Thursday, I'm riding with Billy Horschel, 66 to 1, first round leader. He has teed it up 7 times this season. 6 have gone for 68 or better. This is a course that he knows very well. He used to live right around the corner. I think that Billy Horschel is going to keep that momentum going after a second place finish at API, at least for Thursday's first round. And I think that he could be someone that is going to cash a ticket on Thursday.
Okay, so I have a good amount of Vegas. We'll get to that later. I think he's going to have a great weekend overall. So I'm probably not going to add more, even though 150 to 1. What a price for first round leader. But Billy Ho, you said I had some value on Billy Ho. I didn't find a way to capitalize it. I'm going to tell you on that one, Will. Let's get Billy Ho into the clubhouse with the 60. What is it going to take? 65, you think?
I think 65 if the wind blows. Yeah. So. All right, guys, NBC Sports Edge Plus has a special offer for you. Get 20% off an annual Edge Plus subscription when you use the promo code GOLF20. You'll get expert fantasy insight and tools at one low price all year long. Go to NBCSports.com/Edge Plus and use the promo code GOLF20 to check out and save big. Coming up next, we've got Pamela Maldonado from Yahoo joining us with some of her best bets after this.
"17, 137 yards to destiny. For the best of the best, that's a chip shot, right? Into the water. For 40 years, the 17th has witnessed agony and ecstasy. Who will have this year's defining moment? The Players on NBC and Peacock.
NBC Sports Edge Plus, home to everything fantasy, DFS, and betting, with premier tools and exclusive insights that are second to none. Get fantasy predictions, rankings, and betting trends, plus news and analysis from our experts. Play with confidence today. Visit NBCSportsEdge.com/learn. Don't leave money on the table, no matter your sport. The Predictor app has got you covered. Tens of thousands in cash prizes up for grabs every week. And it's free to play. Download the NBC Sports Predictor app powered by PointsBet now.
Welcome back into a Players Championship edition of Going for the Green. I'm Will Gray, joined by Drew Dinsick, and we are pleased to welcome in from Yahoo Sports Pamela Maldonado. She does golf, she does tennis, she does college football. She is a handicapper extraordinaire, but we are going to pick her brain right now about everything that's going to go on this week at TPC Sawgrass. So, Pam, thanks for joining us, and happy to have you.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm so excited for this week. It's a big week between tennis and now golf with the Players. And of course, we have Indian Wells in California. So I'm really excited for this week. It's a really great week.
Yeah, it should be. So I want to dig right into it. We talked in the first segment about how big of a factor the weather is going to be. And this is a course where you do have some course history, even if it's splits from March versus May. You know some players that like this course, maybe some that don't. Where does your handicap go first when you're evaluating a tournament of this caliber?
There's truly a million ways that you can factor in which player is going to do well, which one you want to consider. And I really just try to keep it simple. And I know that you can look at weather, you can look at course history, but for this tournament specifically, I really just want to keep it to, do you do well in big field tournaments where you have the best of the best? And how are you playing recently? And that's literally all I am doing because actually the more information that I add, it's not always necessarily a benefit. It actually confuses me more. And now I start thinking about these other 10 players that I didn't consider. And now I have my card of 20 instead of my card of 5. And so I really just try to simplify it as best I could. And so for me this week, good form and how well you do in these super strong field events.
When you're looking at current form in particular, are you upweighting anything like strokes gained approach? I mean that I feel like keeping it simple is a great overall message, and in large part, I look at strokes gained approach is so important that that's sort of the beginning and the end in terms of coming up with kind of current form. Is there anything about this course that I'm missing? Should I be considering driving accuracy, distance, anything that's worth giving a second look?
All of those are definitely going to be beneficial, but this is also a less than driver course where off the tee, if you're smart enough, you don't necessarily have to pull out that driver. You can keep it to a long iron. So I'm not necessarily weighing driving accuracy. More so, I'm interested in just how are you doing as of late? And when I say as of late, there's players who are coming into the next event who gain strokes in every category, or maybe somebody like Scotty Scheffler who lost off the tee, but he lost less than one stroke off the tee and he did phenomenal the rest of the way. Those are the players that I like to target because you're coming in with a solid mindset. Golf, more than anything, I know you want to use data points, but if you play golf, you know that confidence is so major in golf. You have to have the feel, and if you lose your iron shot, if you lose your driver shot, well, there goes the rest of your game. Your confidence is just gone for the rest of the way. Something like a putter, that's a lot more variable because it can be hot one week and it can be really bad the next. But something like your irons, if you are a solid iron player week after week, that means you have your confidence. That means your level of play is up. You're comfortable with the shot selection that you have. So I'm looking more so for the players who are consistent, and rather than just like hot off the tee in the next couple of weeks, they've had that consistency over the last 4 or 5 tournaments. And if you've gained strokes in every category, hey, you must be feeling pretty good about your game right now. Those are the players that I want to play.
We need them to invent a strokes gained inclement weather stat, because that's going to be factored as well this week. Who can handle the mud balls and the sideways rain and all that? But Pam, I want to get into your thoughts in terms of specific markets. Let's talk top 10, top 20. Is there anyone outside of the outrights that maybe you see as a long shot that could still have some value on as someone that could get close or be in the mix at least Saturday into Sunday?
One piece of advice that I do like to give is a lot of people like to fire on top 10s and top 5s. More often than not, you're getting plus money on a top 20. So if you're giving me plus 100, plus 105 on a top 20, I'm more often than not going to be risking on that rather than going for the plus 200, plus 300 on a top 10, because sure, those are fun and you're getting more value for those, but you also feel really bad about yourself when your player finishes T11 when you only did the top 10 and you didn't do the top 20. So for the top 20s, top 10 for this week, I do like Daniel Berger at plus 240. You're getting him for a top 10. I mean, he's one of those players that definitely, there's a lot of players in the field that excels in some of these deeper formats, but I really like him specifically because in tough fields, he has a T9 at last year's Players. He took T7 at the US Open and he took 8th at the Open. He does exceptionally well in some of these really good player formats. And he's played 4 events so far in 2022. And I know that he had that WD, but he took T5, T20, and 4th at the Honda. That is a lower strength of schedule, but still, that's one of those players what I was targeting where he had gained strokes in every category in two of those 3 events where he finished in the top 20. And because of this overseeding situation that we have, where it's now a bent POA mix, because of that overseeding, he's actually first in the field for putting on that surface. So how could you just not look at somebody like a Daniel Berger to do well on this course? One that he has done well in before, and he does well in some of these big formats. So I like him for a top 20, definitely for a top 10.
Yeah, I'm going to be very interested to see what Daniel Berger does. The last time we saw him, he was blowing a 5-shot lead Sunday at Honda. So how do you bounce back emotionally? Because the game is clearly in a good place. But I'm with you that some of the bigger events he does tend to play well. But I'll be fascinated to see the next time he gets in the lead, even if it's not a 5-shot lead, what he's able to do that maybe he could learn from those lessons at Honda.
And that's why you want to consider top 20s for these tournaments, because if he does, I'm not particular in betting outrights for this exact reason. Playing 4 great rounds of golf is extremely difficult to do back-to-back every week, and these guys are pros for a reason. But I like doing the top 20s because you do have that cushion of you can afford one bad round and still finish in the top 20. And as we saw from Scotty Scheffler last week, he wasn't even in the top 25 heading into, and they ended up winning the tournament. So you can either run hot and do well on day 4, or you can kind of fizzle out and still stay within the top 20 number on day 4 and cash a ticket and not be worrying about an outright.
I like it. I took some swings in the top 20 market myself, and I actually went for some plus 600s. So I'm on the board a little bit, but I think expecting a big week from Emmanuel Grillo. His current form is solid by my numbers, and really does a decent course fit, if not great course history. And then similarly, I think Joel Dahman has a nice game for this course, solid course fit relative to what I think can help distinguish you as a player here. So anything else you like in the top 10, top 20 market?
I mean, there's a lot of players that I like. My process for looking at golf is probably, I don't ever actually just go into the bag and say, these are the players that I like. I go through every single player that's on the entry list, and I'm seeing what their current form is looking like. So I narrow it down from the 100 plus players, and I narrow it down to 10, and then I try to narrow it down to 5 or 6 that I like. And initially I thought that Cam Young and Chris Kirk were going to be really good options for me, but then there's things that kept me off of them, such as strength of field. They haven't just really played a tournament where you have this many solid players. So all of their results look pretty well, but when you're playing against players who are ranked outside of the top 50, well, then, yeah, you're going to have a better mark than others. So other players that I do like for top 20s, because you're getting plus money value, Colin Morikawa is definitely, how can you not consider him? He's one of the best ball strikers on tour. He took T2 at the Genesis Invitational, gained strokes in every category in that bunch. And when he's gaining strokes putting, you know that he's kind of doing something good, and he has confidence in his game at that point. So if he can have another great ball striking round, I can see him definitely being in the top 10, top 5, maybe to win. He's probably going to be he'll probably end up on my outright market in some fashion. But other than Colin Morikawa and then, of course, Daniel Berger, I do also like Justin Thomas. He's I know he won this event last year, but if you're giving me minus 115 on something that's more likely than not to happen, I think that even that is still considered value.
Yeah, he's looking to break the curse. No one in the history of this event has ever gone back-to-back. In fact, there's only a handful of guys that have ever won this twice at any point in their career. It's guys like Tiger and Davis Love and Steve Elkington, but you have to go back to Adam Scott in 2005 for the last time you've had a defending champ that really got in the mix the following year. You mentioned Chris Kirk. He's a guy that's high on my list. I'm going back and forth on him because the stats are there. He's played well here before. He was a former 54-hole leader back in 2015, but I'm with you. There might just be a piece that's just missing a little bit. So I'm trying to find a way to back him. But is there anything else when we look at head-to-heads or potentially prop markets that you have your eye on this week?
For the head-to-head, we're just talking about Justin Thomas. I like him as an underdog plus 120 over Jon Rahm. I've been fading Jon Rahm week after week, and it's been pretty profitable, and I'm going to do it again this week. Thomas, he did win this event last year, and Rahm finished T9. I kind of can see a similar fashion where I know Rahm is playing poor form right now. He is bleeding on his short game, and he can still finish in the top 20. He finished T21 and T17, losing strokes in his short game. But if you can have Justin Thomas, who comes out with a great round, he can definitely finish in the top 5, top 10, and Rahm stay within the top 20 and still cash that plus underdog ticket. The difference between them, between from now and then with Rahm, is Rahm, he is the best player in the field right now, but he's not the best player in the field at this moment. So that's what I'm looking at. He could be the best player over the last 64 plus rounds, but as of late, he's just struggling with that short game. He's losing strokes both around the green and in his putting. And you want to give me a player as an underdog who is a great ball striker, and he's a great putter short game. Well, he can be a good putter if he finds it, but he's also great around the green. I will always take the great ball striker who's good around the green than rather the player who's struggling right now.
That's a fair point. I'm going to be watching that one very closely because I have
from the other side. As the man
I didn't play the head-to-head though, and I can't disagree with you. Like honestly, in a course like this where things can be chaotic, and a week like this where the conditions are going to add uncertainty, taking plus money makes tons of sense. So that I can't fault you for your process there. I have a couple matchups that I'm curious your thoughts on. I grabbed a little Abe Answer over Max Homa at minus 115. I took a little Cam Smith over Lowry at minus 125, and I backed Henley over Simpson at minus 115. The last of those is really just Simpson dealing with a little neck, not really having played a lot of golf. Like, best of luck to him coming out in these conditions on this course and showing us something, that's going to compete. Whereas Henley, I have as a guy that could potentially land in the top 20 on this one. So, any thoughts in general on my head-to-heads as we head in with 3 looks?
Henley is a player that I really just don't like to back or fade because every time I back him, I'm always wrong about him. I just can't catch him at the right time. He's such a great player. And then he's one of those players who cannot put together 4 complete rounds. And it's always the one round that just puts him out of contention for a top 5, top 10, and maybe even a top 20. So he's definitely more volatile for me. So he's just not somebody that I like to back. But Cam Smith, on the other hand, he's such a great player overall that, yeah, I like to put him more so in head-to-head markets rather than in top 20s, top 10s, just because I'll always take a short game player, and that he's one of them. I do like Cam Smith. He was on my long list for this week. I would trust him more in a head-to-head, just beating one other person, than rather than taking him in a top 20.
Yeah, I read my mind on that one, especially because like his course fit's not great. This is more just Shane Lowry is getting market respect that I just do not come close to, and I think Cam Smith, realistically, trying to build a little bit of momentum before he heads to Augusta to potentially threaten for a green jacket.
Yeah,
so maybe everyone's reading the weather forecast and thinking Shane Lowry winning in the rain in Portrush. It's going to happen again, but we shall see. Pam, thanks so much for joining us and sharing some insight. It was good to get with you, and all the best this week with all your picks.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Don't forget to check out our daily podcast, Bet the Edge, powered by PointsBet, to help you wager with confidence. Sarah Perlman, Drew Dinsick, along with our NBC Sports Edge experts, provide listeners with unique analysis, projections, and picks. Be sure to check out our Edge betting tools and tune in to give yourself an extra edge with all your wagers. Jay Croucher, head trader from PointsBet, coming up next with info on the book's handle and liabilities.
"17. 137 yards to destiny. For the best of the best, that's a chip shot, right? For 40 years, the 17th has witnessed agony and ecstasy. Who will have this year's defining moment? The Players on NBC and Peacock. NBC Sports Edge Plus, home to everything fantasy, DFS, and betting, with premier tools and exclusive insights that are second to none. Get fantasy predictions, rankings, and betting trends, plus news and analysis from our experts. Play with confidence today. Visit NBCSportsEdge.com/learn. Don't leave money on the table, no matter your sport. The Predictor app has got you covered. Tens of thousands in cash prizes up for grabs every week. And it's free to play. Download the NBC Sports Predictor app powered by PointsBet now.
All right, we are back for a Players Championship edition of Going for the Green. I'm Will Gray, joined by Drew Dinsick, and we are now pleased to welcome in the head trader from PointsBet, Jay Croucher, who landed in Northeast Florida this morning in Aussie from Denver and said the air is strangling me, which is absolutely accurate. Yes, the air is tight. I can't say it quite as well as you can, but I appreciate you taking some time to talk with us here and share some insight, pull back the curtain a little bit. Not the literal one behind you, but about what the book is looking at. So let's start right there. What are some of the top liabilities heading into this? It's not a major, but it is definitely a big enough event on the golf calendar that it's probably drawing in some casual bettors as well.
Definitely. Yeah, huge event. Obviously the 5th major, and a lot of the action is coming on the guys you'd probably expect, which is Victor Hovland, who is kind of everyone's favorite player at the moment. We're seeing a surge of activity in him, not just this week, but really the past 6 months. Victor Hovland's a very popular bet, and obviously he's finished top 4 in 4 of his past 5 starts, which is pretty good. And so there's a lot of confidence in his form. And then Justin Thomas, who obviously won last year. And although his odds are a little short, perhaps at plus 1,400, people are confident, and it is such an erratic course and difficult course that I think that people have comfort in going to war with the guy who's won previously.
That makes a ton of sense. And it also makes sense. Jay lands in Jacksonville, and the number 1 overall draft pick market, which is Jacksonville, collapses. So not surprising. There may be some inside information going here. other interesting inside information, or at least I'm curious if you have some. You guys are best price market for a couple of big names. And I kind of want to go down these in order here. And we'll start with Jon Rahm. It feels like you guys are willing to take a bet on Jon Rahm, even though he is the best golfer in the world. 12-1 right now seems somewhat favorable, but is it enticing bettors? Are you getting the action you were looking for there? And would you expect that to shorten as we get into closing this market?
I think there's more kind of scope for it to shorten than lengthen. You're not going to see Jon Rahm too much bigger than 12-1 right now. We're sitting just below the exchange on that. But look, I think the thing with Rahm, two things. One, he doesn't actually win any tournaments outside of the US Open, which is oversimplistic given that he's constantly getting himself in the mix. But then the main thing is, and the reason why he is so long, is just because of the course and the conditions and the fact that that's going to be such a great equalizer. Previously, the past three winning scores have been 274, 272, 270. This year, we're setting it at 277.5. So expecting that the weather conditions are going to make it more difficult. And, when scoring, when we're looking at those higher scores, then that just means that the field and long shots come into play more. And the other thing is that, Jon Rahm, he was at plus 600, plus 700 for tournaments at the end of last season, which is almost unheard of. But this field is loaded. So he's going to have a lot of threats. So you add all that together, and that's why Rahm is 12-1, which, he may not be too many times this year. So might be the best kind of price look you'll get at Jon Rahm for a while.
You mentioned, Jay, some of those long shots that may come in, especially in a week that could get weird with weather. Are you guys seeing any notable shifts, either in odds or maybe some bets that are getting down on some of those long shots that at least get your attention as a bookmaker?
Yeah, Scotty Scheffler, who's kind of in the Victor Hovland mold of just a young up-and-coming star that is in really good form, and that people, they like to be a part of the story of, a young star's ascent. And so a lot of money on Scheffler. His numbers moved from 35-1 into 28-1. So he's been one. And then Patrick Cantlay as well. He's come from 25-1 into 20-1. And, Cantlay is certainly not a forgotten player, but towards the end of last season, where he made his run in the playoffs, he was the main competitor to Jon Rahm to be the best golfer in the world. And so now we're seeing him. He's still behind Morikawa and Thomas in the odds, but you might see Cantlay kind of creep up closer towards Rahm.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the gap between Cantlay, Thomas, Morikawa is a lot narrower than the current market suggests. Speaking of kind of the way the market will shape up, because I imagine you guys take a pretty decent live handle during events like this as everyone's tuning in and kind of digesting things. And as it currently stands, your countryman, Jason Day, you have a big price on him. And I would imagine that with the narrative swirling, the recent loss of his mother, that if he plays well early in this tournament, that thing is going to come crashing down. Are there, is that a fair assumption? And are there other players that you think kind of fit that same sort of story where you're seeing a decent amount of action, you're pretty high on price, and you're going to move aggressively if they play well?
Yeah, I think that, to Will's point earlier, like it is a tournament that perhaps, does suit vets who can just make their way around the course. Someone like a Jason Day took a huge bet on Francesco Molinari at 200-1. And so, I think that this is the tournament to kind of take shots on long shots. I don't think Molinari is going to win the tournament, but, perhaps you might see someone, north of 50-1 win this just because of the conditions of the course. And yeah, it would be phenomenal if Jason Day was to do that. Not quite as big odds, but Adam Scott as well, perhaps another one, in that mold of, Australian clearly. And then also, that vet who was won previously.
Yeah, Adam Scott at 50-1 definitely has my attention as a former winner who all of a sudden has figured out how to putt. I don't know what happened in the last few months, but he has found it on the greens. And Jay, you mentioned we've seen some curveball winners here before, whether it's Craig Perks, Stephen Ames, Siwoo Kim came out of nowhere in 2017. So this is a place where it potentially could happen. Is there anyone, if you take the odds maker hat off and you look at the board yourself, is there anyone that you see some value on or a player that piques your interest?
Yeah, I think so. There's two guys that I'll bring up, and the background is that actually from a booking perspective, this is one of the easiest tournaments to book because you don't have to adjust for course too much, really, because it's just there are no decisive advantages, which makes it easier, really, because you're just going off of baseline talent. But the one thing is that, certain years have rewarded driving accuracy. And so two guys in particular, Abe Ancer, Corey Connors, who are, relatively big prices. Connors 50-1, Abe Ancer 66-1. Those guys very accurate off the tee. And so they could certainly get into the mix. And then the other guy is Xander Schauffele, who's 30-1, which is a pretty big price on Xander. You don't see that too often. And, where this course, it doesn't reward any particular strength. It probably does reward just an all-round game. And so guys like Schauffele and Patrick Cantlay, who don't really have discernible weaknesses, might look at those guys as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Abe Ancer. Drew, I know you've got a matchup on him. If you look in I was playing with our NBC Sports Edge Driver tool in prepping for this show, and if you look at just the last 24 rounds at TPC Sawgrass, total strokes gained, Bryson's number one, but he withdrew on Sunday. Next on the list, Abe Ancer. He's a sneaky good play at this particular course, but we shall see. Jay, as always, thanks for joining us, and good luck with that tight air in and around TPC Sawgrass this week. Have a good week.
A pleasure, gentlemen. Hope it loosens up.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you, Jay, for hopping on. And now we're going to pivot right now to DFS talk. We're bringing in Brad Thomas, another writer for us at NBC Sports Edge. Brad, this is a big week. Another Florida guy like myself, so you're familiar with the tight air, but I'm interested to get your take. Let's start at the top of the board when you're looking at potential fades, potential buys in some of those high salary guys when building a DFS roster this week. Where are you looking to go?
For my high-priced golfer, I hate to do this, but I have to back the chalk and Colin Morikawa at 10,700. He's going to have massive ownership, but this is a ball striker's paradise. And it's a course that really is going to rely on strokes gained approach. If you think about it, with all the water around the course, you don't want to be in any hazard, especially think about 17. You want to gain strokes off the tee. And Morikawa does that. He's top in the field in his last 50 rounds in ball striking, and he's top in strokes gained as well. One thing about Morikawa that's really interesting too is he just excels at so many different aspects of golf, except the putter. I think with the wetter conditions, we'll get a little bit of benefit from Morikawa's weaker putter because he can kind of attack the pins a little bit more. It won't be firm like the golfers we're seeing at API last week. So I really like him as my highest ownership guy in the top 10,000 prices.
This is interesting to me for a variety of reasons, because I think you can't go wrong with Colin Morikawa. He's got such a high floor, especially in the DFS market. He's not going to, put up a curveball 78, 79. But I do wonder, with the weather coming in, how much, personally, I'm leaning a little of my handicap more towards experience, more towards course history, not necessarily guys that have always played well, but guys that have played here a few times. And the two that stick out on the other side of the spectrum are Hovland and Morikawa. Morikawa played last year, made the cut. So he has four rounds here. It's amazing. He has two majors, and this is his second start at the Players' Championship. And Hovland missed the cut last year. So he has never played 17 in the cauldron of a weekend, especially not with the weather that we've got coming in. So for those two particular, I'm trying to balance what the numbers tell me versus what I expect the narrative is going to be.
Yeah, no, when you look at guys like Hovland, it's really important to see how golfers are coming into this tournament. Form is very crucial. I look at a lot of last five, but also I really want accurate guys and really good ball strikers. I'm not too consumed from a DFS perspective about how guys are performing at this course or how often they've played this course, because you want to roster guys who are going to make the cut and have high upside. But you also want to think about ownership. You can't just roster an entire high ownership roster and chalk out. You're going to have no chance in $1 million maker, something that's going to yield high payouts. And that's where you look to Hovland, who's projected in the 10% compared to maybe a John Rahm or a Cantlay, who's closer to 22% ownership. So that's why I look to Hovland as a high ownership, as a low ownership guy in this price range. I'm not too concerned about his lack of experience here.
That makes total sense in terms of strategy and how you put together your roster. And I dig in a little bit more to Hovland because he was electric for at moments last weekend, but then losing 2 strokes putting, losing 1 stroke around the green. Maybe that was fluky. He does seem like a short memory kind of guy.
Yes.
At least of the golfers, as if I was going to try to armchair handicap them. Curious, do you have any looks in the kind of the sub 8K range? Some golfers that folks may not be paying close attention to that could be making the big difference for the weekend.
Yeah, so for my sub 8K range, I have a high ownership guy, a guy who I think is a must roster. If you can fit in this price, I think 7,200 is a little bit on the lower side, and that's Cameron Young, another guy who doesn't have course experience here, but he's top 5 in par 4 scoring, which is going to be really crucial here. A great ball striker. And one thing that I factored in for Cameron Young and a lot of other golfers are, let's say the conditions get really bad and we get lift clean in place or preferred lies. You want guys who are great off the tee, which Cameron Young is. He's gaining 0.9 strokes per round off the tee, and this guy has been lightning. He's been his last six events, top 40 in all of them, 4 of which were top 20s. He's a gritty golfer, so I don't think that weather is going to ail him any. And then once he gets hot, he's going. And I just love backing him at this price. I'm not concerned about the ownership because I know it's going to be high because he's becoming one of those popular names in the PGA.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, he's definitely one of those guys that his DFS salary has not yet caught up to where he is as a player. We saw him really pop at Riviera when he gave Joaquin Niemann a run for his money. But you mentioned the driving, and I think that's really going to be key, not only with the par 4 scoring, but the par 5s. You've got 4 par 5s at this course. A couple of them are going to be reachable depending on which way the wind is blowing. But when you look back historically, that birdie or better percentage on the par 5s at this course, it really pops, and it is starting to become, a correlated trend in that I want to make sure that the guys that I'm backing and the guys that I'm rostering are going to be able to capitalize on some of these par 5s, because that's really where you're going to be doing the scoring this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also makes me look at a guy like Max Homa, who has another low price, and he's a low ownership guy. He's strong on approach, a gritty guy as well, and he doesn't make a lot of bogeys. If you look back and you pull from last 50 rounds, you'll see that his bogey percentage is pretty high in comparison. But if you go a little bit more recent to his recent starts, I say something around last 24 rounds, it starts to become one of the best in the field.
So let's go back towards the top of the board here.
Yes.
And Drew, I'm going to want to get your thoughts as well. When we look at the big names, you mentioned you have to pivot away from ownership. You've got to try and build out your roster that is at least going to have a chance to stand out. But that means fading some big names. So who are guys that you're either going lower on or maybe you're fading entirely as you look to build out your roster?
I'm going to fade Dustin Johnson entirely. You guys talked about him at the top of the hour, about a guy whose price is just absolutely plummeted. I still think that $9,800 is too high. He's not playing good golf. It's just as simple as that. I want a guy who's coming out here, who's hungry. I don't know if he's hungry anymore. He's not good on approach. He's lost. He's terrible tee to green in his last few events, especially at Genesis, where he lost almost 2.5 strokes from tee to green. Like, I can't do it. I want a guy who's going to be hungry, and Dustin Johnson is not that. There's so many other guys in that $9,000 price range, high $10,000 price range that are playing better golf and have higher upside than Johnson.
Yeah, Johnson's almost same price as Patrick Cantlay. What am I missing?
Yes.
Why in the world? How in the world are those even close to equal value? Similarly, Rory McIlroy, he's more expensive than Colin Morikawa. Okay, he's more expensive than Justin Thomas. Okay, neither of those make particularly sense to me. Similarly, I would look at Jordan Spieth as a pretty clear fade at $9,000.
Yes,
I would have priced him more in the 7,500 range, and I would take guys like Corey Connors and even a Russell Henley over a guy like Spieth in this contest. And then similarly, I think Brooks Koepka is going to be popular and not a guy that I think is very worth adding to your DFS card this week. Will, you have any insight on Brooks Koepka and his potential to do anything special at this course?
I mean, he's played well here before. He had a T3 notably a couple years back, but I do look at him not only from a DFS, but also a betting perspective where people see him at a certain price and it's almost an auto bet when you get into these events that really matter to him, because he is so open about saying, I only care about, these 5, 6, 7 events on the calendar, and the rest is a hit and giggle. So this definitely qualifies as an event that he would care about. But I'm with you. I need to see more recent form. I need to see a little bit more out of him. Spieth is another guy there that he couldn't crack an egg on the stadium course when he was, Jordan Spieth, all capital letters. And I know he had a resurgence last year. He hasn't quite gotten back to that level this year, but he's a guy that I would look to fade, maybe look for a miscut price. I could even look for a miscut price on Rory. We shall see.
Not bad. Quick follow-up for you. Would you rather, in that price range, would you rather take a guy like Koepka or a guy like Daniel Berger?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would probably lean Berger. I think that he's got a little bit more bona fides just in the last few weeks, and his game potentially could match up well with what this course is going to require. You know, as Pam spoke about, the strength of field wasn't there at the Honda, but that course was really tough, and I think that it's going to shape up very similarly to the challenge that they're going to face this week. Well, we shall see. All right, guys, we're going to put a pin in this right now. Brad, I'm going to bring you back. We got one more segment. We're going to talk our best bets. We're going to bring back Patrick. We're talking about maybe some props, maybe some fun stuff, but stick around. We'll be back after this with a little bit more talk for the Players' Championship.
"17, 137 yards to destiny. For the best of the best, that's a chip shot, right? For 40 years, the 17th has witnessed agony and ecstasy. Who will have this year's defining moment? The Players on NBC and Peacock.
NBC Sports EDGE Plus, home to everything fantasy, DFS, and betting, with premier tools and exclusive insights that are second to none. Get fantasy predictions, rankings, and betting trends, plus news and analysis from our experts. Play with confidence today. Visit NBCSportsEdge.com/learn. Don't leave money on the table. No matter your sport, the Predictor app has got you covered. Tens of thousands in cash prizes up for grabs every week. And it's free to play. Download the NBC Sports Predictor app powered by PointsBet now.
All right, we are back for the final chase here in the last segment of our Players' Championship, going for the green segment, and we have the news crew back together. Drew Dinsick, Brad Thomas, Patrick McDonald. We're all here, ready to roll. And guys, Drew, I'll start with you, but this is so interesting to me. We just talked so much about guys like Morikawa and Hovland. This really is a bit of a changing of the guard this week. We have no Tiger, no Phil. This is the first time since 1994 that neither Tiger or Phil is teeing it up at the Players' Championship. Meanwhile, on the flip side, each of the top 5 players in the world are 30 years old or younger. It is a very fresh crop of stars, and you see that reflected on the odds board with guys like Hovland and Morikawa specifically. You know, this feels like a bit of a point of inflection.
It does. And on top of that, it feels like it's good for us who are interested in betting in DFS because a tournament like this that is wide open, that has lots of opportunities to try to pick apart value, and that, you know, you're not going to sit down on Sunday and just, you know, the old guard of golf fan viewership, they wanted to see Phil and Tiger on Sunday try to pull off the big win. And I would much rather see like a wide open tournament where everybody has a chance, and we're left with the opportunity to try to pick apart the betting market, because surely back in the day when Tiger would walk into a tournament and be odds on, like what fun is that if you're a bettor? This is, I think, it plays right into sort of the growth of the game through the lens of the betting experience.
All right. Well, this is the part now. If you're watching us on YouTube in the live stream, if you're watching us on demand on Peacock, get out that pen and paper, because we are going through best bets. And Patrick, I'm going to put you on the hot seat. We're going to start with you. We can go matchup. You can go prop, outright. What is your best bet this week at the Players?
I mean, we're talking about changing of the guard, but let us not forget the Players' Championship has a weird way of bringing up these kind of dusty old-timers every now and again. You just look at Lee Westwood, Sergio, Paul Casey last year. 2019, Jim Furyk was runner-up to Rory McIlroy. So kind of in that same vein, I'm in on Justin Rose, top 20 at plus 450. Ooh. You look back at his last 6 Players appearances, 4 top 25 finishes, 2 have doubled his top 10s. And look, I'm okay that this guy missed a cut at Bay Hill. That place beat up everyone over the weekend. You look at his, strong performances recently. It's been on these shorter Bermuda courses. You look at Sea Island, Wyndham Championship as well. And so he's still a fantastic driver of the golf ball. The wedge play is starting to trend in the right direction again. He'll probably need to play the par fives up to field average. That tends to be his bugaboo. But if he does, I like him to at least play inside the top 20, if not a little better.
Justin Rose, a player that I had to double check. Is he in the field? Is he playing this week? Has he fallen entirely off the map? He is here. He is playing, and we shall see. I do like that price on a top 20, even if he doesn't quite make it all the way to the top of the leaderboard. But Brad, I want to pivot over to you. What are you looking at? What's sticking out to you this week?
My favorite bets are top 40 bets. I think last week I went 4 for 4 in top 40 bets. And this week I'm on Cameron Young, top 40 plus 135. Listen, I said it earlier, but I'm going to go in deeper. He's gained 4.6 strokes off the tee at API, which is already very, very challenging. He gained 4 strokes off the tee at Honda, 5.2 at Riviera. This is his first time here, but he's a great driver of the ball and won't find him into those sticky situations. This is at 6 consecutive top 40s, and you're giving me plus money here. I'm going to go ahead and back Cam Young, top 40 plus 135.
I don't know if there's a way to entirely avoid the sticky situations at the stadium course. This is a place, right. Every hole, there's double bogey lurking at every hole, around every corner. You know, it's going to catch you at some point, but we shall see if he's able to keep up the momentum. He's certainly a player, as we said in the last segment, who is outpacing kind of what the odds makers and the salary makers for DFS are really setting up right now. But Drew, let's turn it over to you. What do you got for us?
Yeah, we talked about it. I'm going to take a swing on Rahm at 12-1. I think that's the best we're going to see on him for a while, although the can't lay case is strong by Patrick, I will admit. And then down the board, as we're going to take some swings, I'm going to get a little Grillo at plus 650 to finish in the top 20. Joel Dahman at 6-1. I think those are some nice diamonds in the rough. But the diamond in the rough that really stands out the most to me is Colombia's Jonathan Vegas. He is plus 550 to be the top South American. Now, that is only a 5-player market, which is nice. So we don't have lots and lots of competition here. He needs to beat out Joaquin Niemann. He needs to beat out Mito. He needs to beat out Grillo, who actually I think is going to do quite well. I think it's going to come down to Vegas and Grillo personally. And then, of course, Munoz is the last man in that field. So let's go Jonathan Vegas. I think he's going to be a factor in this tournament, potentially lands himself in the top 10. And at plus 550 for the top South American player, that is too nice of a price to walk away from.
We shall see what Johnny Vegas has in store. You mentioned Joel Dahman. I think it's an interesting case where he's one of the guys that is very outspoken about the fact that some guys play for trophies and some guys play for prestige. He plays for money, dollars American, and he very much treasures his T12 check, the T18s. And this week it is an unbelievable purse, $20 million purse. 3.6 mil to the winner. Everyone in, I think, the top 36 is going to clear 6 figures. So there is a lot of coin floating around that lake by the 17th hole this week for those guys. But all right, I'm going to go, and I will give you 2 because I can. I did not get my outright in earlier. I got Hideki at 30-1, and I want that on the record. I think that, listen, this is a course where Hideki actually putts well. It's surprising to me, but he has a lot of really strong history, a couple top 25s, and he is, as a 2-time winner already this season, he's playing pretty well. But the one that I love the best, and this is just the Schadenfreude bet of the week, over 56.5 balls in the water on 17. Get yourself some popcorn. It's minus 115 at PointsBet, but just sit down and start tallying them off because those balls are going to go in the water hot and heavy, especially once the wind blows. We're looking at 20, 30-mile-an-hour winds on Saturday. I think you could get around 30 balls in the water even just on that day alone. So I'm going to
count on you, Will, to be tracking this because I'm not sure where else you're supposed to track balls in the water on 17.
Oh, trust me, there are ways. We'll be keeping the tally. If we can clear about 30 or 35 by the time we head into the weekend and the weather really breaks, then I think we'll be in good shape. But thank you, boys. This has been a great show and a great discussion. For Brad Thomas, Patrick McDonald, Drew Dinsick, Jay Croucher, Pam Maldonado, I'm Will Gray. Thanks for tuning in to Players Championship Going for the Green.